in the wild coming in from one of our regularly contributing listeners. Um, TR in the DR, volume up.
Man, I really like
DLS and
You really like what?
watching TR in the DR. If you, dear listener, go, I think it's TR surfing. I can't remember what his
He has a
Instagram
couple
is.
of different Instagram accounts, but TR surfing is the one where he posts him surfing.
He rips. He
I know.
like how old is TR in the DR?
60.
And he rips. He's like surfs better than Kelly Slater.
Yeah. And he rides shortboards. I mean, he rides everything. He rides longboards too, but he does rip on a shortboard still.
Yeah.
So TR in the DR has been at it for a long time.
DLS and Chaz. TR from DR with a little pros in the wild for you. You're just mentioning how it's amazing that years later pros remember their brushes with us common folk. And it made me remember a really funny one. I went to Hawaii every winter for over a decade and would always stay in this little plywood room on the beach at 𝐒𝐿, next to Flippy Hoffman's house. One afternoon I was surfing in front of my place. This bald-headed little grommet dropped in on me and faded me, and then I just kicked out behind him knowing that you got to tread lightly over there. And then he paddled back out, paddled right for me, splashed water in my face, and I just looked away. And then I paddled for another wave, and he came beelining straight for me to drop in on me again. I just let him go. And then a couple years later, I recognized him as Conan Hayes. And fast forward a couple years after that, I was in Peru shooting with Kalani Rob for Jacked video for O'Neill. And he was traveling with Conan Hayes. Kalani and Conan were the sweetest, nicest pro surfers I think I've ever shot with. So kind, always down to shoot, super friendly with everybody we came across. By this time, Conan had the cornrows with the braids, and I felt comfortable enough to say, hey, you know what? You actually dropped in on me at 𝐒𝐿 Sandbar and splashed water in my face. And he immediately remembered. And he said, no way, that's you? You burned me. We had it on video. Taylor Steele was filming. And we watched it over and over 100 times. We're like, who is this howly kook who thinks he's ripping? And Conan splashed water in his face. Ha, 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 ha. And we laughed it off. It was pretty classic, but that's the story for tonight. Work.
Surfers and their elephant memories is really, it could be a whole segment. Like Laird, Kelly, clearly Conan Hayes, like surfers, for some reason, what is it about it? Like Kelly can pull a wave, and it's not just Kelly. I've seen this a lot, right? Like from a professional surfer who will remember exactly what heat you're mentioning, what section in a movie you're talking about. Like, how do they remember all their things?
I have no idea. Look, it is distinct to professionals
Yeah,
because
professional surfing. I don't remember.
I don't remember anything.
Yeah,
I,
nothing.
I've surfed for 30 years and I've surfed half the amount of sessions. I mean, 1/10 of the amount of sessions as some of those pros. So they're logging more time and remembering all of it.
I don't get it. That's
Yeah.
really, truly, and like something like that, an interaction, splashing water in somebody's face in Hawaii, if you're Conan Hayes,
Yeah.
like none of that is particularly out. It wasn't like, oh, then the guy put on a clown wig and, started doing a hula or something. Like there's nothing about that incident you would think that would uh necessitate remembering.
No, the thing that stuck out to me about that experience is that there's a sense of bravado that you have when you're a young teen who has never been punched in the face that empowers you to act like a total asshole. And I remember feeling it myself when I was that young, and you're like pushing the boundaries of like doing stuff that is, not criminal, but certainly like not acceptable society wise, just to make your friends laugh, basically, or just to find out where the boundary is. And those exact things are the most obnoxious thing for a 40-year-old male who's stressed out about life to experience.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Like when I see, and I've caught myself now, and I no longer rankle, but like, teen boys on e-bikes in the pack, like, just driving like animals through, quiet streets or whatever. Like where I used to really, I was just like, you kids, I was Clint Eastwood about it. But now I think, yeah, well, that's what you do at that age.
So what do you do as the adult though? Like Tony obviously turned another cheek because he realizes Hawaii is kind of a different area where he does. Conan Hayes has uncles who are going to punch you for Conan. So there's
Yeah.
nothing you could do about it. But even if you can beat up 8 12-year-olds, maybe not 10, but even if you could beat up 8 12-year-olds, you're not going to. They can completely be making fun of you, making your life miserable, blocking your car, whatever it is. And there's no version where you get out and start throwing punches.
There was a version for me a couple years ago. I
What
literally,
was it?
uh, there's these kids ripping around the street. They're probably 13, 14, probably. Ripping around on e-bikes with an airsoft gun. Uh,
Mm.
and they shot the wind. I was driving, and they shot the windshield of the car, and up the street. So I calmly turned around, drove. They were kind of trapped in a dead end. I just parked. I grabbed one kid by the shirt, kicked the other one's bike over, and at this point, they like three of them just went booking off. But I kept the one by the shirt. The one by the shirt now was just weeping, like he was weeping, and I was just like had balled up, and then was just kicking all the bikes over until they all crashed. And then I was like, "You don't do that anymore, kids!" Like threw the kid down and went on my way. But
Were
I'm
you
real lucky I didn't get in trouble for that.
were you operating on blind rage?
No, I wasn't. I mean, I felt pretty calm. I was just like, you don't do that. Like, and so this would be my advice on this kind of thing outside of Hawaii, of course, right? Hawaii has different rules. But if something is done directly to you, kid to adult, I think it's on you to calmly address it, right? If you look away, like if these kids are just ripping around shooting air guns in general, it would have been annoying, or airsoft guns, it would have been annoying, but they purposefully shot my windshield. So now it was on, and I haven't seen him ever since. This was years ago. Never seen him again. Never seen him riding or shooting. So I
Yeah.
feel like, well, the lesson was learned.
Also, in that scenario, I don't know where the boundary is on physicality of what you can do to that
I
kid.
just grabbed his shirt. I never grabbed, like, I grabbed the neck of his shirt and
Yeah.
just held it real tight.
So that's your community. And so you have a responsibility as an elder to check the kids who are acting out of line in the community. And so I think you did the right thing by not letting them get away with it. You have to check them somehow. Again, it's up for debate on where the boundary is of how to check them, but
I mean, I
I
should have
think
gotten so busted for that though. Like even kicking the bikes over, right? Like,
yeah,
I mean, they must have been so worried that they never told their parents because I was fully expecting a parent visit and fully expecting that I would explain myself. I'd say
yeah,
your
yeah,
kids
yeah.
were driving around shooting cars. Like that's
Right.
that crosses the boundary.
Do you know that Lazy Acres in Encinitas?
Yeah.
I went there earlier this week. I was driving by. I love, if I'm ever driving by at lunch, I go in there and grab a sushi burrito.
Hmm,
Fantastic, dude.
good to know.
Yeah, really good. Um, so, anyways, as I was pulling into the parking lot, there was a couple of, let's say, 13 to 15-year olds um, slowly meandering through the parking lot, so much so that I have to like slow my car in order to
Yeah.
pull into that row to park. And one of them had been eating something and he had a black plastic fork. And while he was passing me in front of the car, he just threw the plastic fork onto the ground as they were moving to the vehicle that they were going to. And I tell you what, I mean,
Blind rage.
I got the blind rage a little bit. I mean, not actually, not fully. I got like 50%. So it wasn't blind, but it was like mother effer. Like, I need to tell that kid not to litter. You know what I mean? But I didn't. I ultimately didn't
Yep.
say anything. And I was just like, it irks me so bad to see somebody do something. Again, in this community, in this civilization that we live in, we need to all be, we need to just operate by certain rules. That is outside of the rules. But I'm not his parent. I'm not, I shouldn't be, I like didn't know what to do. Ultimately, now that I'm saying it, I think I should have said something. I don't know how I would have said it, but I should have said something.
So the problem here is if you say, "Hey, pick it up," right? I've done
Yeah.
this before, and he doesn't pick it up. Now all of a sudden there's a standoff. That's where do you pivot from there, right? You've got to give yourself a way to handle it. When I've done this kind of stuff, typically I'll try to be so with the scary with the voice that they just jump and react, that their first instinct is not going to be one of defiance. They'll wish later that they were defiant, but their first instinct will be to run and grab it, and then
Yeah.
whatever. Once again, once you say pick it up, and if they say no, you pick it up, then you're stuck, right?
Yeah. I think shame is a good motivator. And so maybe in this scenario, I could have just like rolled up slow, rolled down the window down, been like, hey, dude, it's a fucking dick move to
Yeah,
litter. Like, don't be a dick. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, nobody think, yeah, something along those lines.
There's something, but I do feel though that things need to be said to let
Yeah. Yeah.
in general, and I think to let the blind rage take over. But once again, and again, Hawaii is different, but if that's how kids learn, that's how you learn the boundary line, is
Yeah.
somebody
Exactly.
finally says no, right? And then you remember that, okay, because I think a lot of most people, I would say, uh don't like confrontation, right? They
Agreed. Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
like the feeling of, they like running around and going wild in the streets, but then, okay, now this led to a confrontation. I don't like the way that makes me feel. And then they have that marker inside of them, right? When I push it this far, I don't like the way that makes me feel.
It's a good point. I remember when I was in that phase of being a teenager and pushing the boundaries, I was surfing like 61st Street, Newport Beach with my buddy, and an older dude, kind of local dude, burned me on a wave, and I kicked my board out like
Yeah.
towards him because I had seen surf videos where people did that,
Yeah.
And so I was like, it looks cool when people do that. I'm going to do that. And he kicked out of the wave, came at me, like rushed me like a bulldog, just like you mother effer, like, and he got to the point, I don't think he got in my face, but he like came at me hot and heavy like that and was yelling at me. And I fully backed down and freaked out because he was right. It was a stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
I was only
Dangerous.
doing it. Yeah, it was dangerous. Now, the reality is I didn't kick him at him. I didn't kick it at him. I was not brave enough or wild enough to actually try to hurt the guy. I was just trying to like look cool in front of my friend and hope that guy who was on the wave didn't see it probably. But he did see it and he came, bull rushed me and put me in my place basically. And I never did it again.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I think is we don't need to go overboard here, but I think like when, especially as a dude, right? As a man, like when the little men are acting up, how are they going to know? They're going to know half the time, I think, in this day and age, especially, discipline is probably not a priority. And especially in like wealthy beachside communities, this is where it's worse. If like, I was in some poor community and there was the poor kids like throwing rocks at a silo or something, I'd be like, okay, I mean, cool
Right.
kids,
Yeah.
like, what are you going to do? But it's like rich, entitled kids who don't have any discipline and clearly aren't getting disciplined at home. I think those are the ones who need the little surf justice in their lives.
Agreed. Well, this is again quite the perfect segue into our next call coming in from the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Hey, this is Chris from Florida, the golf, calling for the grit. This is a pros in the wild, not like any other pros in the wild. I'm sure this happens everywhere. It gets warm. Every kooky kid that's got a board in the garage can go surfing because they've got a board in the garage. They're not surfers, but, they're free Americans. Anyway, it's really bad on the Gulf Coast. Hurricane hits, no school, no work, kids run wild. Kids and kooks, like grown adults, that just grab a board and go down. Anywho, one such hurricane swell in Naples Pier. Not very strong, waist to chest high waves, but not a lot of power. Paddle out, I'm on a longboard and catching some waves, and I see a guy, and I'm like, oh wow, that guy looks like pretty jacked. Like, what's that guy? What's his story? Get a little closer, and I'm like, oh shit, that's professional Muay Thai kickboxing world champion 𝐂𝐨𝐧𝐚𝐧. This is like no regular dude. This guy's like one punch knockout master. And the thing is, all these kooks and hipsters and idiots on their longboards and everything are just burning this guy. They have no idea who he is. They have no idea. They just burned one of the baddest people on the planet Earth. I found it to be kind of hilarious, but like he was riding a stand-up paddleboard, and it's with golf, so there's a lot of stand-up paddleboards and surfboards and all that bullshit. But I just struck a conversation. I was like, "Hey man, you want to catch a couple waves on this, longboard?" And he goes, "No, I brought the wrong board down here. This is like for like Indo or Costa Rica." The guy surfs all over the world. He's been all over the world with his pro fighting career. Couldn't have been a nicer guy. So anyway, my pros in the wild of a non-pro surfer just trying to get some waves. All right, cheers, boys. Keep up the work.
Be careful who you pick a fight with.
Be careful for sure. I mean, especially those guys, the quiet ones. But those guys, like a guy like Cosmo would know better. He would know probably also, this goes to the beach. I'm going to punch you. You're going to die. And then I'm going to get arrested. And that's not going to be cool.
I don't even think he has the desire to punch anybody at that point.
No.
Like once you've done it all, you don't really have a desire to do the least of it all.
Yeah. Well, and not that my situation is similar to a universally respected fighter. I really worked on tamping, or not worked on it, recognize, the blind rage was funny for a minute, but it's not funny anymore. Like aging out of that blind rage, even if you see the kid throw the plastic fork, right? Or whatever. Like, yes, addressing it, but without the rage
Right.
is all of a sudden way more powerful. When you are calmly saying, "Hey, pick it up," but you're not gonna take it to the mat. I think that is also, I don't know, has more gravitas behind it. I think when people see you're twitchy mad, they know, oh, this guy's either a full-on wild card or kind of weak. I think if my fork throwing made him, his eyes pop out of his head, that's what I feel when I see people rage over nothing. I think, okay, you got issues, and you're not, because if you were actually strong, and I'm talking about strong, both fortitude and physically, all of it. If you were strong, you would not be freaking out right now. You'd have control.
Completely. Yeah. Your blind rage freak out automatically alerts anybody, not only the person you're yelling at, but everybody else around, that you've got an issue of your own.
Yeah, you're not a serious person.
I was driving back in the morning the other day. There's a park near our house, and there's always these two women who set up like a Jehovah's Witness little stand.
Oh yeah. I
Like
said,
they've got
those guys, man, that is a job. That's at every park.
dude, they're there at like 6 a.m.
Yeah. Have you
It's
ever
all-
seen one person chatting them up?
No.
Yeah.
But the other day, so I see him every day, but the other day, directly across the street was a dude on a bicycle, and he was yelling at them, "You're going to hell."
Oops.
And the women were like ignoring him. He's like, "Hey, ladies, like to get their attention. And you're going to hell." And I was like, dude, those women are there every day. They're not
Yeah.
bothering anybody. Like,
No.
what are you doing? You know?
Did you feel about having an interaction with him?
Yeah, I was driving, like there was no possibility for me unless I wanted to pull over.
Yeah.
But it did cross my mind of like, to protect them almost is what
Yeah,
it
just leave
was.
them
Just
alone.
like, hey, asshole,
Yeah.
like chill. But my thought with the Cosmo thing is, I don't know when I saw this or where, but kids who do jujitsu, at a young age, or probably any martial art, I think the thing was about jujitsu, but they're much more in control of their emotions and ultimately don't have violent outbursts.
Yeah.
Like once you're engaged in that level of, whatever, maybe that is the outlet, but it also allows you to regulate and to understand your own emotions And then when you're in the classroom environment and you're 8 years old and somebody steals your puzzle, you know how to handle that. You don't
Yeah.
snap.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it makes a lot of sense. Also, what in like knowing what's going to happen, I feel. I think a lot of kids get out of control because they've never been hit, they've never been in a fight, they have zero idea how any of that stuff feels. And also, if you're able to, in jujitsu class or whatever, you're fighting somebody, but there's no emotion attached to the fight, right? Like
Right.
you're physically fighting someone that you have no beef with, that you're both training, right? And it's great.
The
Where,
equivalent of a chess match sitting across the board from somebody.
yep, but it looks like a fight.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, my main takeaway from all of those two stories or calls is how silly it is to get in a physical fight over a wave.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, even the times that I look back on the times that I've gotten raged in the lineup, just you effer. Uh, but I don't know. I still think about it and you get burned and it's infuriating and you get burned by somebody because I think it's so infuriating, but because it's either somebody is uh willfully being totally selfish, which is an annoying thing to have to deal with, or it's somebody being super clueless who's refusing to learn. Like I've so many times, so countless, how many times wave pops up, you're in position, good looking down the line, you start to drop in, there's somebody 20 feet down the shoulder who's staring at you dropping in and continuing their paddle. It's not like their head is turned away, that they've given, they're looking at you, paddling in, slowly popping to their feet. Like what was going on in your brain? You're
I
looking
know.
at me do this thing.
I know. I'm starting to feel the rage
Me
myself.
too.
But when I say how silly it is, it's the reality is we're all having recreational time in a very, lucky scenario. A lot of
Yeah.
people never see the ocean in their lifetime, and here we are playing in it. And so let's have some perspective.
Getting mad.